Hello and welcome to the flipping and wholesaling houses in New York show. I'm Michael Pinter. Right, teach you how to start flipping and wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So the question today, I get this question a lot, is can you wholesale a bank-owned property? Now, the real answer is it depends. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to tell you some ways that you can figure out how to do this without dealing with bank-owned properties. Now, just as a background, for the first 4 years I was in business, so about 9 years ago till 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I bought almost all my properties at the auctions. So technically, I don't know if you can even call them bank owned because the way the foreclosure process works is somebody stops paying the mortgage, takes a long time in New York to go through the process. You get there and then there's an auction. At the auction, what happens is that they put it out to all the people sitting there and bidding. And if it doesn't sell to any of those third party bidders, which was me and everybody else sitting there, then it goes back to the plaintiff, which means it becomes bank owned. Um, Now, what happens when it becomes bank owned? So we call that REO, real estate owned, or bank owned properties. So you're going to hear stories back in the days when I was around in 2008, where you were buying these properties from these asset managers. It's unlikely to get a deal from somebody like that. But what usually happens when something's bank owned is that the bank lists it with a realtor, and the realtor puts it out as a bank owned property. And is it possible to wholesale it? So I'll tell you, it's really similar to what happens when we talk about listed properties. It's very, very hard to wholesale a listed property. And I'm going to explain a few reasons why. And just to tell you how much I believe this, very often I get calls from sellers who say, oh, I got a postcard from you, or I saw your name, and sorry, that's something in my eye. My house is listed for sale, but I heard you want to buy it. So the first thing I say to every single seller says that is, if it's listed, it's probably not going to work. Now let's explain why it won't work. It won't work because two reasons. First of all, everybody has access to that property if it's listed. Second of all, if a property, certainly today, that is listed is not selling, it's only happening for one reason. Now, you may say that's impossible. There's so many reasons. There's one reason, and that is the price is too high. Now, you can say, what if it's a horrible property? There's still a price for it. What if it's a terrible location? There's still a price for it. There's always a price, right? And the way you look at real estate, and I tell a lot of people getting into real estate, you have to look at real estate as a commodity. There is a price for everything, right? The worst property in the worst location has a price, especially in our area. So if it's not selling, it means a few things. It means it's probably listed too high and they're not selling it at a price that makes sense. So bank-owned property almost always gets listed with an REO, real estate owned agent. So there are some big agents in our area. So like Michael Kenduck from Century 21 or Todd Jovino from Island Advantage. Those guys list a lot of bank-owned properties. And if things sit there, it's only because the lender is not dropping the price to where it needs to be. That's it. That's the only reason. So can you wholesale a property? Extremely unlikely, because let's think about how the wholesale process works. I buy a property that's listed for sale, and I believe it's listed way under market, right? Somebody screwed up, and I grab it. First day it's out there. They're listing it for $400,000. I put in a bid for $370,000 and I get it. And I think it's a $500,000 property to another investor, in theory. When I put that out to my list, every investor, I mean, with rare exception, is going to look and see that it was listed for sale for $399,000, right? For $400,000. For me to ask anything above that is almost certainly going to result in somebody going, what the hell do you offer me? I can tell you this from my perspective. If someone comes to me with a listed property and says, hey, this is maybe something you want to buy, I'm usually a little nauseous immediately. Don't show me something listed. I can find that stuff myself, right? And most people feel, most of the buyers I sell to and most of the people that do business, we want off-market properties, right? Something that's on market is a red ocean, right? There's sharks fighting for it. I don't know if I'm going to get it. I don't know what's going to be, but I'm like every other guy. I want off-market properties direct from sellers. That is what I do, right? It's what I pride myself on and what I expect to get from someone who tells me I have a deal for you. So a lot of my coaching students, I have to educate them because I tell them I'll help you, right? I'll go on appointments with you. I will work numbers for you. I'll wholesale it with you, but don't ever bring me a listed property unless you think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Unless something's really off. Now, occasionally, there's a listed property, and it could be a deal. So I bought a property a few months ago. It was listed for $699. I know I've told the story a lot. I hope you haven't heard it. It was listed for $699. Seller calls me and says, I want to sell it. I go, listen, I got to tell you, the only thing you need to do is drop the price to $599. You don't need to sell it to me. She goes, I want you to come. So that's good sign. I go there. I tell her I could pay $450 for it. She goes, okay. Buy the property. Hold it for 2 days. Sold it for $575. Now, there was an issue there. There was some unpermitted things and issues and things. But the point is that almost certainly, if it's listed, it's unlikely to get a deal. So I get calls from people who are just starting out. They go, I found there's a property for sale up the block from me. They're asking $450. I think it's a $500,000 property. I'm like, okay, it might be, but if it's listed for sale, don't bring it to me. I don't want it unless you know something specific. For example, now there's a few cases. So the case I gave you where the seller really is desperate at that point, needs to sell it, needs some certainty, needs convenience, the things that we provide, and is willing to give a big discount. That's something interesting. Second thing is maybe there's no access, right? No access to it, right? It's really offered for sale for a good price, but no one's buying it because they can't get into it. That's something. Occasionally there are things like a huge lot. People don't realize how big the lot is. Maybe that's something. But 99% of the time when something's listed, it's not going to be a deal. 99% of the time. And I can't tell you how many people are spending their time looking at listed properties. It's just much harder to get a deal, much harder to make money, much harder to find something unique. So when you have bank-owned properties, they're almost always going to be listed for sale with a realtor. And got to tell you, the realtors, including the ones I mentioned before, the worst people to deal with. They don't give you any feedback. So I may offer $340 and some other guy comes at $341. And whether there's shenanigans going on because they told someone to offer $1,000 more or not, I have no idea. But the point is, I cannot stand dealing with REO realtors because you get no feedback. Nothing. Just put in an offer, they say we'll get back to you. Highest and best, the same bullshit you get all the time. But you don't get any feedback that you can get from a normal realtor who will tell you, listen, you're way below, in which case I know I don't have to think about it anymore. Or you're close, in which case I can think about it really and get into the nitty gritty. Maybe I want to offer a little more. You don't get anything from them. And I understand that they're protecting the lenders who are their bread and butter, right? They get their money from listing these things. They don't want to get into this. Although I'm sure there are REO agents out there who do shenanigans and have preferred buyers who get last look and things like that. I don't know which ones do, which ones don't, but I'm sure it happens. So I hate dealing with those. So can you wholesale a deal? Extremely unlikely. Remember, once it goes on the market, it becomes a listed property. Very unlikely. Now, if you have access to asset managers, I spoke before, so properties owned by banks that are not listed, or a bank, that could be very, very, very good, right? Because you're getting something that's off market and you're getting something that could be a great deal. But it's hard. It's hard to talk to asset managers. It's hard. Asset managers do not want to talk to people who are onesie twosies. They want to talk to people who want to buy huge quantity, right? I want to see a tape of, which is just a spreadsheet, a fancy name for a spreadsheet. I want to see a tape of 100 properties. I'm looking with this criteria. Very often the bigger servicers or lenders want you to have a large geographic area that you want to cover, which is harder to do, right? Harder to comp out properties. Sometimes they'll give you the ability to carve out and you can nitpick, pick and choose. Sometimes they won't. I dealt with this at length in 2008, 2009. I was in the mortgage business. We started buying properties like that, but it's very hard to form those relationships and hard to trust the people on the other side, whether they're really going to give you something good or not. Hard to find people that are going to let you pick and choose out of a tape which properties you want. It's hard. It's harder. There are guys who made hundreds of millions of dollars buying tapes, massive amounts of properties in 2009, 2010. But you need a lot of capital, and it's hard. So is it possible to wholesale bank-owned properties? Once they're listed, I would say almost impossible. Impossible. Even if it's a deal. So unless you're getting it at such a discount from the listed price that you can then offer it to your wholesale buyers, your cash buyers, for even well below the asking price. But even then, most guys are completely turned off from deals that are listed. So is it possible to wholesale bank-owned properties? Probably not. I wouldn't try it, right? Now you can buy those if you want to fix and flip them. Sometimes you can get them at a pretty good deal. Sometimes you can even wholesale them if they aren't completely messed up. But a lot of these properties have been winterized, which means you don't know if the plumbing works. I bought a property that was winterized, turned on the plumbing. It was like a sprinkler system throughout the house. There was leaks everywhere. Very common. You don't know if the electrical works, and everything's shut off. It's hard to know what works and what isn't, and it probably takes money, but you can fix and flip it. I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in my course where I teach how to do exactly what I just told you and a lot more, go to howtoflipnewyork.com/course. If you're interested in the various ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in coaching, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in partnering up on a deal, you can call me. My number should be in the notes, but my office number is 516-209-2010. It's my office number. If you have any comments or questions, put the comments in whatever platform you're watching on. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If it's an easy answer, I'll just reply. If it's something a topic that I covered, I'll send you links to the videos. If it's something I haven't covered in a while or something new, I'll be happy to do a video on it to answer your question. But keep the comments coming. I really appreciate them. Please keep liking. Thumbs up really help me. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. And I hope this was helpful to you. So thank you very, very much for watching.